In 1991, a colossal clash shook the wrestling world when WWF's powerhouse Earthquake, real name John Tenta, faced off against ex-sumo star Koji Kitao in a special WWF SWS event in Japan. This match did not go as planned. Instead, it turned into a shoot. Kitao, resentful over consecutive losses, abandoned the script, refusing to cooperate in the ring. He insulted professional wrestling by calling it fake on live TV. He was immediately DQ'd and subsequently fired from Super World of Sports. And today we're going to explore this whole saga by looking at the backgrounds of both wrestlers, the business context of the WWF SWS partnership in 1990, and the details of the two encounters between Earthquake and Kitao taking place in the Tokyo Dome and in the World Hall in Kobe respectively. In April 1990, Genichiro Tenryu, one of All Japan's top stars who's now considered a legend of the sport, left AJPW to launch Super World of Sports, or SWS, financed by Megan Super, a glasses maker. SWS aggressively signed talent from All Japan and New Japan, prompting critics to dub it Money Puroresu, as it looked like Tenryu was using the old Vince McMahon 1980s method of snatching up talent. The buzz drew in top names, with former yokozuna Koji Kitao among them, and the buzz even led to an interpromotional partnership with Vince McMahon's WWF. And so, in October 1990, SWS and the WWF announced a working relationship, planning joint shows in Japan, which I'm sure sounded very interesting to Japanese wrestling fans. This unusual alliance produced several supercard shows, with two in particular getting held in the Tokyo Dome. The first was WrestleFest, happening on March 30th, 1991, and the second was Super Wrestle, taking place on December 12th, 1991. These cards feature WWF stars such as Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and The Rockers, mixing it up with SWS stars such as the Great Kabuki, Tenryu himself, and of course Koji Kitao. And at the first Tokyo Dome show, Koji was booked in a match against John Tenta, better known to WWF fans as Earthquake. The match was booked as a titanic clash of former sumos, seeing as both men had sumo pedigrees. And the events of that day would lead into one of wrestling's most infamous shoot incidents 2 nights later at a show named Wrestle Dream. This one took place in Kobe. We'll look at both matches in just a moment, but first, let's take a quick look at the competitors just to get a little more background. John Tenta Jr. was born in 1963 in Surrey, British Columbia. A star athlete, he played football and won a wrestling scholarship to Louisiana State University. In 1985, at age 22, he began a professional sumo career in Japan under the Shikona Kodo Tenta, nicknamed the Canadian Comet. He dominated the lower divisions, starting off with an unprecedented 21-0 win streak. Tenta's size, eventually billed at around 6'7", and athleticism made him a complete and utter sensation. He earned the Fighting Spirit Prize in sumo and briefly reached the Makishita ranks, but he left the sport after less than 3 tournaments. Tenta later explained that sumo's rigours exhausted him. The truth is, Tenta said in an interview in 1986, that sumo is 4 hours in the ring and 22 hours being controlled by someone else. He compared it to being a, quote, show and tell exhibit, feeling like a clown under the tight supervision of sumo elders. After his retirement papers were signed by his stablemaster following a violent incident, Tenta returned to Canada. Almost immediately, he shifted to pro wrestling. He went back to Japan in 1987, debuting in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and according to records, his first match was on May 1st, 1987, teaming up with AJP founder Jan Baba to defeat Rushiner Kimura and Goro Surumi. He spent roughly 18 months in All Japan Pro Wrestling, wrestling with veterans like Jumbo Tsuruta and the Great Kabuki. By 1989, Tenta had made enough impact that American promoters noticed. He signed with the WWF in September 1989 and was rebranded as Earthquake. His television debut famously came as he appeared suddenly from the crowd to sit on Dino Bravo and Ultimate Warrior's backs during a strength contest. Using that setup, he launched a devastating attack on the Ultimate Warrior, and from then on, Earthquake was an unstoppable heel monster. The WWF pushed him as a top villain, and by mid-1990 he had earned himself quite the reputation, even receiving Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Most Hated Wrestler award. Earthquake often feuded with top babyfaces, scoring pretty significant victories along the way, but what catapulted him was his brief but memorable feud with Hulk Hogan. No one who watched WWF during this era could ever forget an angle that saw Earthquake pulverizing Hogan's ribs with his big splash. In early 1991, at the time of the SWS alliance, Tenta was well established. His size and aggression made him a natural draw in Japan as well as America. Fans in Tokyo warmly remembered his previous Japan tours. He got a good reaction from the crowd based on his previous experiences there, and he was booked as a top foreign villain against Japanese heroes, a pattern common in SWS shows. Koji Kitao was born August 12, 1963 in Mie, Japan. He entered professional sumo in March 1979 at the age of 15. Gifted at 6'7" and 353 pounds, he was lauded for extraordinary athleticism. Climbing through the ranks, he made a big splash by defeating reigning yokozuna Kitanami in 1983 and earning an Outstanding Performance Prize. By March 1986, at just 22 years old, Kitao reached sumo's pinnacle, Yokozuna Futahaguro Koji. Incredibly, he was promoted to Yokozuna without ever winning a top division tournament, a first in sumo history. However, Kitao's attitude undermined his career. Reports from that time describe him as volatile and difficult. After a series of lackluster performances, unbecoming of a yokozuna, he physically assaulted a junior stablemate and then, in a fit of rage, attacked his own stablemaster's wife. In the tradition-bound sumo world, this was unforgivable. The Sumo Association expelled Kitao in early 1987, the first yokozuna ever forced out. So, after being forced out of sumo, Kitao surprisingly turned to pro wrestling. He debuted in 1989 under a mask as Monster Machine in the AWA. He then joined New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1990, trained in their dojo, and even got himself a big victory over Bam Bam Bigelow at a co-promoted show on February 10th, 1990. But his temper returned. In July 1990, he was fired from New Japan for using a racial slur against superstar Riki Choshu. By late 1990, Tenryu's SWS was actively recruiting. Kitao signed on in November 1990 as part of Tenryu's Revolution stable, and reportedly, Kitao decided he didn't like the idea of losing a lot considering his Yokozuna rank, so he signed with SWS rather than put over Riki Choshu. With SWS allied to the WWF, Kitao even appeared on WrestleMania 7 in LA where he and Tenryu upset Demolition in a quick tag team match which surprised many fans. He was treated like a major star, and in Japan he wrestled as a top heel, often using his sumo size and aggression to dominate his matches. I think the best way to go about this is to watch the two matches to try and see if there's anything that happened at the first Tokyo Dome show between Kitao and Earthquake that would make their following match 2 nights later play out the way it did. Many people focus on the Kobe Wrestle Dream match, but let's see if there were any issues at WrestleFest 2 nights prior. First of all, Earthquake gets a great reaction when he steps into the ring. He's billed as Earthquake John Tenta, and fans cheer for the big man just before the match. Kitao gets a good reaction too, so this illustrates to us that fans were being respectful towards both competitors. A headlock from Tenta starts us off, no one moves after a shoulder block, and so far all seems absolutely fine. We have now got a headlock from Koji, another shoulder block with neither man moving an inch, so Kitao almost takes Tenta's head off with a clothesline, and the big man then finds himself tied up in the ropes. A boot to the head fixes this little problem, and Tenta gives as good as he gets when he delivers a clothesline of his own. So really, this is all typical stuff. Whatever you can do, I can do better. Both men showing they're pretty evenly matched, nothing to worry about. Things then get a bit scrappy as they throw shots at each other, but again, it's all in line with what you'd expect. It's definitely more snug than usual, and Earthquake's being forced to work a lot faster than normal. But what I'm noticing here is that fans are starting to favour Tenta in a pretty big way. This gets demonstrated again after a knuckle lock. The two get up, Koji delivers a few stiff kicks followed by a clothesline. And when Tenta moves out of the way to avoid another clothesline, the fans get really loud when cheering for Earthquake. The two end up at the ropes. The referee wants a clean break, but instead Earthquake goes on the attack. Again, the fans cheer for what's an obvious heel move, and John follows up with a back elbow before trying a bear hug. This unfortunately doesn't work out and Kitao breaks out pretty easily, so Earthquake comes in with another clothesline, another few clubs and a jump kick. The jump kick didn't look great, but at least the big man tried. There's a chin lock right there. Koji's now in serious trouble. But when the move gets broken up, we go back to the shoulder block spot again, and this time Kitao isn't going to play around. He throws a few forearm shots, he comes in with a running knee, and the fans cheer for a back suplex. They cheer even more though when Earthquake kicks out. Koji tries a few kicks. Again, the strikes are all very snug in this match, but John would have expected as much heading into it. Big John catches his opponent out for a power slam, and this is where our match ends, ladies and gents. One elbow drop later and the big man starts jumping around to signal for the Earthquake splash. It's a pinfall victory for John Tenta, and yeah, it's hard to pick out anything that's out of the ordinary in this match, except maybe the strikes from both men were a little stiff at times and the crowd also favoured Tenta over Kitao. For sure, there's nothing here that would warrant what would happen 2 nights later in their rematch, and I thought both men were given equal time on offense throughout the bout. Nothing crazy going on at all. Backstage, Earthquake says he beat Kitao tonight, he's going to beat Kitao again in Kobe, and John will beat Kitao anywhere in Japan until he decides he wants no piece of the Earthquake moving forward. So let's move forward 2 nights later and check out the match from April 1st. Both men make their way down to the ring, and maybe it's the acoustics inside World Hall or maybe it's the TV production, but the cheers aren't as loud tonight for either man. I'm putting it down to the smaller venue and the fact that most fans already watched this bout 2 days prior. Kitao wants to start slow, but Tenta decides nah. He moves his opponent's arm out of the way, he applies the chancery, and he releases the hold when the referee tells him to. The men reset, they go in for the usual knuckle lock test of strength and Kitao falls to one knee. He then gets up, the struggle continues, and Earthquake breaks it with a headbutt before the two reset again. This time we've got a waist lock from Tenta. We can see Kitao trying to break the hold by prying the big man's hands apart, but John won't let go. Instead, John takes Kitao down, which does seem out of place when considering Earthquake's moveset. But this makes Kitao get a little angry and, with no expression on his face, he leaves the ring, he grabs a table and he throws it in Earthquake's direction. Thankfully there's a big old wrestling ring in the way and the table doesn't get anywhere near Tenta. Kitao seemingly calms down, he gets in the ring and the two go into another test of strength. This time, without warning, Kitao tries to put Tenta in an armbar, and I'm guessing this was totally unexpected because John quickly breaks free by swiping his big paw at Kitao's face. It's at this moment you realise something isn't right and you know this isn't part of the script. Kitao feints a kick, Tenta wants to lock up again but Kitao swipes him away. John shouts something at his opponent, he looks incredibly angry but he's standing his ground, though Kitao is pretty much expressionless. He almost seems cocky and pretty happy at what's going down. You're watching now just to see what happens next, and it's Koji who tries to kick his opponent. John catches his foot, the two end up in the corner where it gets a bit scrappy, and the poor little referee gets caught in the middle as Kitao goes for the throat but he only gets Tenta's beard. It's at this point where the two men really need to get it together. If they can't get on professionally from here, it's all gonna fall apart. But unfortunately, the two are giving each other the death stare and things are gonna get even more heated. Kitao's pointing his 2 fingers out like he wants to try and poke John in the eyes, and this is exactly what he tries to do next. But John avoids it and he throws a hard kick to his opponent's leg. It's now at the point where someone needs to come in and stop this match before someone gets seriously hurt. But Koji once again points his fingers out, so John does the exact same thing, threatening to blind his opponent before his opponent blinds him. Eventually Kitao balls his fist up, and perhaps we don't have to see any eyeballs getting pulled out, but it's still a very intense situation we've got in the ring. Neither man are given an inch, and instead Kitao says something to John before putting his hands on his hips. This makes Earthquake say, "Who do you think you are? This is pro wrestling." And this lets us know exactly what John was thinking when all this was going down. Yeah, I reckon we were all thinking the same thing when watching this for the first time. The referee tries to have a word with Kitao, but he ends up getting legitimately kicked. So the ref calls for the bell, Earthquake wins via DQ, and Kitao gets out of the ring to grab a microphone. This was caught on fan cam. Loosely translated, Kitao calls wrestling fake and he says someone like Earthquake could never beat him in a real fight. And Koji's words here probably got him into more trouble than the actual shoot fight within the ring. Also, and not to call for blatant unnecessary violence or anything, but if Tenta couldn't beat Kitao in a real fight, then why didn't Koji prove as much while in the ring? Anyway, in pure Rezu tradition, calling wrestling fake is a cardinal sin. Kayfabe was still alive and well in the United States, but of course most, if not all fans of a certain age, knew wrestling was scripted. In Japan, pro wrestling was treated like a legitimate sport, and therefore Kitao's words were treated as outright blasphemy. Koji Kitao was subsequently fired from SWS following this outburst, and that's what went down that fateful night in Kobe, Japan. The question is, why did the shoot fight take place and why couldn't both men cooperate? Well, rumour has it that Kitao simply did not want to job out twice to John Tenta. It's really that simple. Koji thought that it was disrespectful to have him lose to a foreigner during 2 straight matches, and therefore he wasn't willing to go along with the script. That being said, and to play devil's advocate, it did look like Tenta drew first blood by not letting go of the waistlock and bringing his opponent down seconds later. But this could have been due to Kitao not playing ball before the waistlock got applied. All we hear about John Tenta is how good of a man he was. No one ever had a bad thing to say about him, and all accounts state he was a big softy at heart, with no intentions to hurt anybody in the ring. With the reputation Koji Kitao already had before these matches even took place, it's very easy to take one man's side in all this, and judging by how Kitao acted once he got out of the ring, it's clear to see who was at fault really. In the aftermath of the Kobe match, both men's careers took divergent paths. Kitao's firing from SWS effectively ended his run as a major star. He disappeared from the main event scene and only resurfaced years later in smaller promotions and in MMA. Tenta, meanwhile, continued on as a top WWF heel and eventually a mid-card babyface. By late 1991, Tenta was headlining events even with other SWS veterans like Tenryu and Haku. Contrary to some myths out there, Tenta was not shamed or exiled by the Japanese. In fact, crowds cheered for him during the matches we watched, and he had continued to get cheered when visiting Japan. He even wrestled Kitao twice more in Japan in 1996 for the Wrestle and Romance promotion, which also tells us that both men were able to put the past behind them for the sake of doing business, and this is a good thing, though details about these meetings in 1996 in regards to their personal feelings remains largely unreported. The facts, as best as we know, are clear. Kitao lost twice to Tenta on March 30th and April 1st, 1991. In Kobe, his refusal to cooperate and his public insult of the business got him DQ'd and fired from his job. All records, WWF archives and Japanese magazines list Tenta as the winner. Overall, the 1991 Earthquake Kitao saga stands as a fascinating look at different cultural attitudes and wrestling tradition. It exemplifies how in Japan respect for the art of wrestling meant that Kitao's outburst was unforgivable, and reinforced Earthquake's popularity as a durable foreign monster. The match and promo afterwards have become a part of wrestling history. Many discussions have taken place regarding the Kobe match, but by sticking to the facts and looking at both men's careers in the aftermath, we see that Tenta's career was hardly harmed by this bizarre turn of events, whereas Kitao's legend became forever marred by that one single night. For what it's worth, Kitao did get his win over Tenta in 1996. By this point, John had lost a lot of hair and Koji had gained a lot of weight, but physical appearances aside, both men were not as good as what they once were. Fans were expecting the old and very real rivalry to reignite when these two stepped into the ring again, but really, the legend surrounding the infamous Kobe match kinda gets diluted when you see the men performing again years later. It actually kinda ruins the myth surrounding the 1991 showdown, but I guess in a roundabout way that this is the actual happy ending. At least both guys were professional this time around, and at least they gave fans what they paid for. Both men, unfortunately, are no longer with us. Koji died in 2019 at the age of 55 from kidney disease. He also suffered from diabetes, yet he refused to have a double leg amputation. And John Tenta died in 2006 of bladder cancer just 2 weeks before his 43rd birthday. Both men had fascinating careers for different reasons. No doubt neither man would want their careers remembered for this one match, but it's still a very interesting story from the history of professional wrestling. One that also maybe highlights a difference in cultures and attitudes, especially when promotions work together on an international level. Thanks for watching everyone, and please take care.